This is the Board of Education regular business meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Law was provided by written notice on April 26, 2007 to the Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Reporter, the Star Ledger, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Long Hill and Warren. Can I get a roll call?
Mr. Binder? Here. Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Calderano?
Yep.
Mr. Beckner? Mr. Horowitz?
Here.
Pepe?
Yep.
Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yep.
Dr. Yaggett? Dr. Seelig?
Here. Thank you. For the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start with reports and presentations. Dr. Stronglin.
Thank you, Dr. Seelig. Just a few good news things. Upcoming events, 50th anniversary. On February 25th, we will have Movie Day, and we will also be hosting a senior citizen breakfast that day. We'll be showing 3 movies. There'll be popcorn served, and it should be a very entertaining day. That will be on February 23rd. On February 29th, the Murray Hill Chinese School will be hosting their annual Chinese New Year celebration. And did I get that date wrong?
February
I think
9th.
I did. February 9th. I'm sorry. Not February 29th. February 9th. So I encourage you to come and visit all of the festivities that will be taking place here at our school. And of course, on March the 14th, we have our upcoming 50th anniversary dinner dance that's going to be sponsored by the PTO. I hear a lot of buzz about it already, so if you're interested, get a ticket soon, and please come. And I do have another good news item to share. We have been getting in the various acceptances from some of the most competitive colleges. And I'd like to just briefly run down quickly a list of ones, thank you, couldn't find mine, that students have been accepted to thus far. We have students accepted at Boston College, at Bucknell, Caltech, Carnegie Mellon, Columbia University, Cornell University, Emory University, George Washington University, Haverford College, Johns Hopkins, MIT, New York University, Northwestern, the College of New Jersey, Tulane University, University of Chicago, University of Miami, Notre Dame, Washington and Lee, Wellesley College, and Yale University. Now, this is only February 4th, and that is quite a nice representative grouping of students that have been accepted thus far. So forgive my taking your time, but I was very proud of these students, and I wanted to take the time to acknowledge their acceptances. And that concludes my remarks, Dr. Seelig. Thank you. Yes.
That wasn't a comprehensive reading that you gave,
No.
right? So it's a sample.
Just a sample.
Just a sample. Okay. I just have one comment this evening. I asked Lynn Thornton how many self-evaluations have been completed. We're up to 8 now. I asked her to go ahead and prepare we're making that. I asked her to prepare a evaluation or a summary of that, and we can have a discussion at the next board meeting. Probably, realistically, it's going to be more like in March sometime, maybe the last meeting in March, to have a self-evaluation discussion with the board, okay? Given that we're between now and then, we're going to be deeply involved in budget and budget review. With that, Mr. Stiles.
I think I'm going to hold my comments to the section of the agenda that discusses the budget.
Okay.
So I have nothing else.
All right. Dr. DeGansey.
Gives me great pleasure to indicate that our PTO has generously supported again the growth and development of our teachers and our staff in general by providing what they call mini grants, numbering up to $2,500. Teachers apply for this for projects for their classes or projects for the departments or interdepartmental, which go beyond the normal budget that has been allotted for the departments. We have 4 items that you will vote on for accepting that the PTO was generous in providing for our teachers. One was an Epson R1800 printer. This will allow photographs to be printed on site and used by all the departments. And we have a lot of photographs, as you can see, as you walk around the building, and this will allow more to be done. Second, supplies for our World Coaches classes to again do a program of a hands-on nature in one of their subject areas. Shop on Demand vac, which they're like little robots that get hooked into our tools so that sawdust isn't flying all over the place. And last but certainly not least, to show all the wonderful work of our students in ceramics, we're going to purchase a case. So I just wanted to share that and publicly thank the PTO for the support of the staff as well as the students. We have concluded our 8th grade parent orientations, the last one on last Thursday, where parents from the 4 sending districts plus St. Vincent's had an opportunity to meet with all of the supervisors in the various departments who discussed their curriculum. So it was a nice evening. It looked like we had about 500 or 600 parents and guardians last Thursday. This Thursday, we have a junior parent night, and for the first time, we're going to have representatives from some colleges, College of New Jersey, Raritan Valley, Rutgers, talking about their various programs, and then addressing questions that people may have from the audience. Two other things. The Hall of Fame is moving well, and we're down to the final selection process, and hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we'll have some announcements. And our sports teams have done wonderfully. Our hockey team is ranked in the top 20th in the state. Our fencing team, both boys and girls, in the top 16. Swimming team will make the states for about the 5th or 6th time in a row. Our wrestling team is ranked number 1 in the county, and our basketball teams are doing remarkably well this year. Both of them will make the states, and both of them are rated high in the counties. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Tom. At this time, seeing no students' reports, seeing no student representatives here, we'll move on to committee reports. Policy did not meet. I was mistaken. I thought it was going to be this afternoon, but it's actually, we had to postpone it to next, I think it's a week and a half from now, actually, before the next meeting, when we'll meet. I don't think finance met. Did you, Rob? Did you meet?
No, tomorrow.
You meet tomorrow?
No, tomorrow.
When did we meet?
Last board meeting.
From the last board meeting.
Didn't we, when we met,
No, that was before the board meeting.
Right?
was it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was about
Yep.
an hour.
But you did, they are planning, finance is planning to meet, I think tomorrow. Is that tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
We are going to meet again tomorrow.
It's-
I
No,
called it
No,
off, but then
it's Monday at 5 p.m.
It's Monday.
And tomorrow.
and tomorrow.
Oh, you kept tomorrow? Like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I originally, let me explain. I originally said, can we postpone it? But then I wanted to make sure I maintained tomorrow as well, because I wanted to give you some basic information to go by. Because the date, I was hoping we can get something the end of this week, but we couldn't. So I didn't want to have just one meeting right before our board meeting. I wanted to give you more information.
You'll have that information tomorrow?
I'll have some, at least. I'm going to try to get as much as I can for you.
It'll be somewhat incomplete still,
Well,
unfortunately.
I guess, do you think it'll be worthwhile to meet? I mean, in addition to Monday, because we have Monday at 5, so
I think
we have an hour and a half.
I think it will be, Rob,
If you think
because
so.
I think what I'm going to try to do is prepare just for the committee some basic tax information, and I think you
Okay.
probably want to know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so tomorrow at 5, and then also next Monday at 5 as well?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And then co-curricular? Pete, did you?
Yeah, we met and we discussed a number of items. One was sophomore teams. So the other was the request to put things into the capital budget, such as improving the football locker room, installation of bathrooms bathroom facilities out at the football field, and refurbishing the track. So those things, if they are in the budget, in the capital budget, they are things that would be highly recommended by the co-curricular committee. The idea of sophomore teams was raised, and Mr. Saratella will survey the conference teams and the schools that may have sophomore teams. If they do, and in what manner do they function as an independent team or a adjunct, not adjunct, but an auxiliary to the program, such as just sophomores playing on certain days against certain schools. What is the cost and how it would affect the overall program of that particular sport. So we'll wait to hear from Mr. Saratella when he gathers that information. Yes.
Pete, the co-curricular committee, when they were looking at the idea of refurbishing the track, did they have estimates on the cost?
I think they do, and if I'm not mistaken, it's somewhere around 112, 15,000 to do that. It's been recommended time and time again by the track coaches that each year we wait. It just increases the possibility of it affecting our athletes adversely.
Thank you.
Yes.
When was the last time that the track was refurbished, refurbished, or?
Tom just whispers in my ear, 1996, along with the tennis courts at the same time. So again, if we are considering one, we should probably consider two to make it cost effective or more cost efficient.
I think it's more putting it into the long-range plan. Now, I'm not sure it's in the budget, though. Can we get it into the budget? Or?
It was in the long-range plan, it currently is not in the budget.
What year was it in the long-range plan for this year?
I'm not sure of the year. I do know it is in the current 5-year plan. It's one of the 5 years. But there were three items that were in the capital budget. One was the bathrooms, the track, and the locker. I know that currently we still have the bathroom is in there. But that was discussions we had with Mr. Saratella as well.
It's also, I think, field hockey irrigation, that should be in the long-range plan. I think we talked about that, I'm not sure. And then press box, another item in the long-range plan. That should be in the bleachers.
The press box is definitely in the plan.
And bleachers.
Can't recall.
Okay, those are
The rubber gym bleachers. It's been
Been
on
around
a
for a
hook
while.
the last 5 years.
They were bumped last year.
Huh?
They were bumped last year.
Bumped last year, the year before that.
Is there, does Nick or any of the coaches know if there are any safety concerns with regard to the track? I mean, I don't know what they would consider safety concerns, but I would think that if
Well,
there's indentations or breakages.
The
of
longer
surface.
we put off doing the track, the track becomes less resilient.
Right.
And the harder surface you run on, the more susceptible an athlete may be to some injury.
Pete, what is if you look at other high schools with similar tracks, how long do they generally go before they?
8 to 10 years.
We're at 12.
We're at 12 and counting. Up.
Probably in retrospect, the oversight was when the turf field was put in. That would have been the
Ideal time to do
the
it.
ideal time to have included, would the turf field cost be 600,000? I don't know what it was, 600,000?
550, something like that.
Whatever, and how much is redoing the track in the area?
Approximately 110, 12, 15.
So it would have been financed at over 5 years, low 20,000s, and is this the last year? We have one more year for the track.
You mean for the football field?
The turf.
Yeah, turf
The
field.
turf field ends in the end of
Oh,
09.
09. So we would have been 80% done this year, right?
But also remember that was gifted
Be
to
a
us
good
by
year,
the
by the way.
foundation, so
Well,
our mind was to accept a wonderful gift rather than
Well,
what else can we find money in the budget for.
I know, but the ultimate responsibility is the district. We're fortunate that they've, have been able to raise money, but if they weren't able to raise money, it's the funding is done through the high school, not through the foundation.
Pete, could you finance that and get a 10-year, some kind of thing for 10 years to pay for it? Like maybe 15,000 a year or something like that, or 18,000 a year?
I'm not in a position to answer that. Tim would be.
5-year max?
Currently 5.
The only extension, did you
Energy.
say there
How much
is
is
energy? Is that even official yet?
No,
No, that's proposed, right?
that's proposed, yeah.
And that would be 15 years.
And 5, even 5 is tough because generally the banks always like to see something tangible they can take. Not that we wouldn't pay the loan, but I mean,
Take the track,
The
it'd be
thing,
tough.
Peter, that maybe it makes sense for us to look at is, in the budget this year, there's a certain amount of equipment and some other things that we're including, it's been proposed to include in a 5-year financing package. And the one issue of perhaps including that also would be the sound system, I think, also for the auditorium, or the security system, which I confused the two. The sound, right?
Sound.
Security was in there, yeah. So the other thing might be to take a look at what the resurfacing of that, so maybe on one of your committees, or with Tim, we could maybe get a fairly accurate budget request, and then include that in the financing, the next package that we're discussing, for this budget cycle. So now would be the time, Tim, to maybe get to see whether or not we have the money to include that in that package.
Okay.
That's also one of the things that the sponsorship committee can look at, selling your name on the track or something like that. Is that something that's doable or not doable, or having somebody?
It's all
else?
doable.
I'm sure you can.
That's a nicer road to go than we keep adding on to the debt of our future, which is going to knock into our budget if we continue
Or in
to.
conjunction with it, at least.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions from Poker right there? Peter, negotiation?
I can report that the negotiations committee was busy last week finalizing the proposal after our meeting. We discussed the proposals. Proposals were exchanged with the association on Friday afternoon, and I spent an hour and a half this afternoon here in the library with Jim Carden, the head of the Teachers Negotiating Committee, with both sides' proposals available to any teachers who wanted to see them. Today, about 10 teachers came in and read through both the teacher's proposal and our proposal and asked a few questions. We're scheduled to have a second session where the teachers can come in tomorrow from 2:30 to 4. After that, we will have a negotiations session with the Teachers Association on March 4th, a Tuesday. And the plan for that evening is to go over in detail each side's proposals to understand exactly what is in the proposals, and thereafter to start the serious negotiations. And that's what I can say about it.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think that's all the committee's reports. Did I miss anybody? Before I move on to public comment, I would like to welcome our student representatives. See if you guys have anything you want to add or say at this point in time. Russ or Dan?
Yeah, sure. We have something going on called Action Auction, which is a fundraiser held by the ASC. And pretty much what it is students come up with teams of like 10 kids about there. And then they perform various tasks that the judges will like tell them to do, like such as one example is you have 30 seconds to make a human toilet. So using all 10 students, they have to somehow form their bodies to make like a toilet, and they get points based on that. So that's just a fundraiser thing.
Yeah, we're sending concrete diagrams. We send
struggling with that.
lollipop or a flower, or both, to like another student in school, as long as it's appropriate and everything. You send a little message like "Happy Valentine's Day," my sweetheart, or something. And
Be careful. Might find a long-term sweetheart.
Tomorrow, the World Language Forum is holding a Mardi Gras.
Oh, that's right.
yeah, that's like the fundraising carnival and everything.
For
I live in lymphoma. For the kids.
Is that
And,
upstairs?
yeah, we sit there, we're sweating. We have windows
Yeah.
open, fans going in winter time.
Yeah, that is. It's like 90 degrees.
It was
Is
really
that
hot.
the west wing? Is that
Yeah,
the
upstairs.
West wing upstairs,
Yeah, all those classrooms there get really bad.
where the chemistry labs are?
The history
History
class.
classes too.
History classes and the chemistry labs are on the opposite side.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, it's a whole balancing. Okay. Any other comments? Anything else?
I think that's all.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. With that, we can move into the first opportunity for public comment. It's the opportunity for the public to speak on agenda topic items. There will be another time for you if you want to talk at the end of the meeting, at which time you can then open it up to any topic. But at the start of the meeting, we'd like to just restrict it to agenda topics. If you have comments, you're limited to 5 minutes, and give your name and address before you speak. Okay? No comments? If that, we'll move on. Board discussion, we had, is this the part you want to address, the budget, Tim? Is that the
Yeah, budget review.
budget review?
Yeah.
This is an update more or less on the process than on the detail of the budget. So with that, Tim.
Thanks. The budget process this year, in terms of deadlines, before I get into the deadlines, I just want to explain to you that generally, you get the budget to the county first for their review. That's the first phase of approvals. It's usually the first week in March. They've stepped that up this year to February 15th if you're applying for a cap waiver. Cap waivers allow you to go beyond the cap for things that are out of your control. An example would be energy costs. If your energy costs you're projecting higher than 2.89%, which is CPI, you are allowed a cap waiver. Example, insurance, liability coverage. If your liability coverage or workers' compensation coverage goes beyond that CPI, again, you get a CPI adjustment, things like that. So those type of things, which are out of our control, I generally always go for. And I recommend you doing that because we don't have control over a lot of these things. And if you don't go for that cap waiver, you're cutting into classroom expense. You're going to have to cut something, or you're going to have to cut an operation or something to make up for that cost. I can tell you right now that the cap waiver numbers aren't nearly what they used to be years ago. Trenton has done a very good job in trying to control that as much as they possibly can. So the numbers are not staggering, but they're enough. They're enough that I think it's very important that we do go for it. So my first recommendation to you is going to be that we should adhere to the February 15th deadline and go for those cap waivers. We've talked a little bit in Finance Committee about it. Finance Committee has some details on the budget that we've been going through. We have to get down to cap. One of the issues that we have in determining where our cap is the state gives you two downloads. They download the software, and you can input the numbers in, but they also download on a second time edit checks. The importance of edit checks is it's a check and balance to make sure that your cap numbers and your cap calculations are correct. So without the edit checks, you really can't rely heavily. I mean, you can rely somewhat on your estimated cap numbers, what your budget cap, what you think it is. But without those edit checks, it's very difficult. I don't have the edit checks yet. It's February 4th, and it's due on the 15th. Obviously, Trenton is making it very hard to go for a cap waiver. This is a design on their end. There's no question. They've also asked for an awful lot of information. 3 years of trend data they want. They want some, I think, a couple of months of board secretaries' reports. So this is not a simple process. A cap waiver, this board can approve those cap waivers. And the Trenton can take a look at those, look at our line items, and deny all of them. So we'll have to cut everything to get down to the original cap without the cap waivers. So it's very important to understand that. So we can go through the process, which I would like us to do, apply for the waivers, and you can still get knocked down by Trenton. And they have much more broad powers than they used to. They can look at each line item and say, well, you know what, I don't think you should have that. I don't think you should have this. And on that basis, we're going to deny that cap waiver. So I just want you to be aware of that's a process that is in play now. And it was kind of more automatic in the past, as long as you can justify that specific cap waiver. So for example, if we say our insurance costs are higher than 3%, so here's our cap waiver request. In the past, you would get that, as long as you can prove that your costs were, or at least your projections were based on something, a letter from an insurance carrier, whatever the case may be. Well, now you can have that letter of insurance carrier, and they can still look at that and say, wait a minute, you're spending too much money on your supplies here, or this account, that account, and they can knock down that cap waiver.
Co-curricular,
They may not like your co-curricular.
sports team. It could also be if you have new hires budgeted at anything above step 1, which in a high school would be very unrealistic for us to budget at step 1 of the guide for any new hire. So those are the kinds of things that are pervasive, I guess, in terms of the review of the cap waivers. So, it really is a very serious process of review that will take a lot of Tim's time to provide the excellent trend data and analysis data that he will have to provide to be able to substantiate this information.
Fran, are you saying that if a teacher was at step 12 at another district, and the teacher came here, they would expect the teacher to go back to the start of the salary guide?
That's exactly right. Insane.
Well, they wouldn't expect the teacher to go back to step 1. They would expect us to cut other expenses so that the only cost to us would be a step 1, despite the fact that we'd be paying them at step 13.
Oh, that's even better.
So, I mean, that's some of the challenges we're dealing with. What I would like to do, we have our finance meeting tomorrow, and I want to go through some of the preliminary figures with taxes and whatnot. I also want to make sure I give the board members a booklet by the end of this week with a lot of the details in it. I'd like to get it down to cap. I mean, that's really, I like to go provide you with a budget that is over cap and show you things that are in it, and I could show you what we've eliminated to that point in time. But ultimately, you're going to need to vote on a budget that is within cap. So if it's outside of cap, which the Finance Committee has now, it doesn't really help you all that much, because that's not what you're going to be ultimately approving to go forward to the county office. Some very important dates I'm just going to throw to you and explain to you some of the processes and approvals that I'm sure you're aware of anyway. As I said, the 15th is the date where we have to get the budget into the county. That budget is the preliminary budget. The county has to take a look at that and approve it. But understand that that's not the final budget. That doesn't mean that that's the board's final budget. Because you have time between February 15th and all the way, as I'll show you later, March 20th or whatever date we pick for our public hearing. That's the final budget that goes to the voters. So the first approval is an approval to go to the county to get their approval. Okay, the first board approval. Second significant budget date, if we were not going for the cap waiver, it's March 6th. So if we weren't going for a cap waiver, the date that has to be to the county is March 6th. But we're going to go for the first date, because why not make life more difficult, right? The county has, the executive county superintendent has until March 19th, 2008, to approve the budget. Doesn't give us a lot of time. The earliest date for a public hearing is March 19th. The significance of that is our meeting, our second meeting in March is March 17th. The last date for a public hearing is March 27th. I think Fran and I were looking at it. One of the things we'd like to suggest is moving that second board meeting date, if we can, from March 17th to March 25th. I'm putting the public hearing in on that date. That would be a Tuesday, I believe. So instead of having 3 meetings in March, you still have the 2 meetings, and you can hit the statutory date there. That's Tuesday, March 25th. The notice of the public hearing has to be in the paper 4 days before that, so about the 21st of March, if that were the day. Generally, 4 days before you have the public hearing, you have to have the budget, at least 4 days. You have to have the notice for the public hearing in the paper. And that's where the advertised budget shows up in the newspaper. This year, that advertised budget's supposed to be more user-friendly, so, I don't know. I could tell you, it probably is a little bit, but not a lot. And then the last date to approve the budget prior to the election is March 28th. So if you don't approve it on the first go-around, you can keep going until the 28th till you get an approval. And election date is April 15th, right on tax day. Wonderful. Just some election days, just so you're aware of them. Nominating petitions, the filing deadline for the nominating petitions, February 25th, 4 p.m. Last day to withdraw for a candidate, March 3rd, 2008. And the day that I get to pick the order in which the ballots are placed on, or the names are placed on the ballot, is March 5th, Wednesday, March 5th. So those are the dates there. So basically, we have a finance meeting tomorrow. We're going to discuss some figures in terms of what the tax impact will be, what we believe our cap is at this point in time with the cap waivers that we do have. Monday, before the board meeting, we're going to have a second one with hopefully all the details. Hopefully, we will have our edit checks. Hopefully, we will have the documents that we can push forward to the county office for approval. And then on the 11th, we'll be having the items on the board agenda for that special meeting, and a public hearing on the, not a public hearing, but our meeting will be on the budget itself.
Okay.
That's what I have.
Thank you. Go ahead, Laura.
Traditionally, the March PTO meeting, the budget is presented at that time. Now, obviously, the dates would be after the PTO meeting, because you're talking about the end of the month, getting to that. Is there a way to get preliminary information, or?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just give us the dates, Laura, and then we'll work around it.
Okay, any other questions of Tim? Do we want to just, at this time, go ahead and make a motion and, with regard to moving the meeting date from the 17th to the 25th?
I'll make the motion.
Can I get a second? Second. Any discussion on that? So this is to move the March meeting from the 17th to the 25th so that we can be in alignment with the requirements that we have with regard to public presentation of the budget. I think we do that with just a roll call, with a voice vote. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Abstainers, say nay. Abstain. All right. Carries. So the meeting in March is moved to the 25th. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Tim?
No, nothing.
With that, we'll move on to the action items. We have, I just want to make sure everybody's aware that in your package there is a revised agenda. It says it's a full agenda, so you don't have to worry about piecing things together. It says revised at the top of it. Just make sure you have the right version. We have items A1 through A12. Does anybody have any of the A1 through A12 that they want pulled so they can vote on separately? Rob?
Well, I don't know if it rises to the level of being pulled. I just want to ask Tim on A9, the non-constituent district rate for next year. Tim, can I just ask a question on it? Do we have kids who attend our high school who pay, Fran?
Yes.
About how many? I mean,
In the category of non-disabled, we have maybe less than 5.
Listen, okay.
Okay, in the category of students with disabilities, there's a larger number.
So this applies to the non-disabled kids,
Yeah.
right? And does this 12,821, is that formula similar, or is it equal to what you anticipate the fee that we calculate to charge the Greenbrook students?
It's the same one.
It's the same one?
Yeah. This is a district-wide formula. In other words, any school, any sending tuition.
Any sending district or individual sending?
That's correct.
person?
Any
Anybody who wants to
individual, correct.
Send their kid here.
Right.
And we say that's okay.
As long as you pay.
I'd like to
Okay.
request that one be pulled for discussion,
You want
in separate vote.
Pull A9.
pull A9?
Yes.
Okay. Any others that want to be pulled at this point in time?
Bernie, does that apply to 8, 10, and 11 as well?
They're all tuition-based.
They're all tuition.
Those are special ed and...
I think it would apply to the A10, but not necessarily to A11.
Let's just
Maybe pull all three, sure.
we'll pull all three. Okay, so we're pulling A9 through A11. Are there any others that need to be pulled at this point in time? Can I get a motion on A1 through A8 and then A12?
Let's do those items. I'll move those items.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Do I, any discussion then on those motions that are in front of us, A1 through A8 and then A12? Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote?
Mr. Binder?
Yes?
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano? Mrs. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz? Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Pepe?
Yep.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Yaget?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Okay, do you want to do A9 and A10 and A11 separately, or do you want to do them together? Individually, okay. Can I get a motion on A9, so at least we can get in front of us so we can talk about it?
I'll move A9.
Can I get a second on A9?
Yes.
We got a second. I have a move and a second on A9. Any discussion on A9?
I guess I want to give anybody else a chance first, but I do want to speak to it.
I think you're up, Bernie. You want us to like delay it for a minute so you can swallow your coffee?
No, I want to pass these out. While it's being passed out, I'll just give you some background. Over the weekend, I did some thinking about the question of tuition from Greenbrook. And based on Rob's, raising the question, I did some thinking. I came to like a different conclusion I had a few days ago, and I'd like to describe that to you. The question that was addressed by a letter from our lawyer had to do with the question of interest on a project, or interest plus principal, and does Greenbrook, have some responsibility for the entire amount? Before I answer that question, I'm going to give you two hypothetical situations that I want everybody to think about. The first one is, what if we did our $45 million addition, and instead of borrowing roughly 35 million, we went to the taxpayers of the three towns, Warren, Watchung, and Long Hill. We said, folks, we think we don't want to have a bond on this, but we'd like you just to give us the full $35 million in the next half year. And we're going to pay for the entire addition with that money you gave us. And we're going to avoid all interest charges. I asked this question. In that circumstance, does Greenbrook have any responsibility to pay a fair share if they had 1/5 of the students? Now, under one interpretation of the way we've done it in the past, you would say, absolutely not, because there's no interest, therefore they don't have to pay anything. Tilt. Now my second one. This is something to think about on the way home. The second question is, what if we borrowed the 35 million, and instead of having a 20-year repayment, we could do it with just like an unending open credit line, so that every year going forward we paid roughly 4% interest on 35 million, or we paid that amount every year. It's about 1.4 million. And then we would say, well, that's simple then, because we know that Greenbrook takes 20% of that amount, and it's roughly about 300 million every year on into the future. 300,000 every year into the future, so they would have an unending interest stream, just as the three towns would, but we would have, the three towns would have 80% and Greenbrook would have 20%. And I'm not going to go into the details, but there's a way of looking at cash flows over time. It's called present worthing. Now, what I handed out to you here, I'm just going to circle 4 numbers for you, and we're not going to really resolve all this tonight. If you take a look at the left columns, there's a number on the top that is 32,426,000. That's the loan amount. That's in red. And over the life of the loan, we pay back that amount. That's the 4th column. We pay 23 million of interest for a total of 57 million. So again, just circle those numbers. If you take a look at the far right columns, there are 6 columns. Let's start with the one right next to the red 4.3%. If you take a look at the payments that the district makes to the people who gave us the money, the present worth of the repayment is 16.8 million. The interest is 15.5, for a total present worth of 32.427 million. And you say, aha, see, that's the amount that we borrowed. So somehow when you, just like on a mortgage, you know, when you pay them back, if they take an evaluation of the money you pay over the life of your loan, and in fact it's equal to the same amount you borrowed. So that's not a surprise. In the next column, I have the 20% share of that, which is just simply 20% of the numbers I just mentioned, 3.3 million repayment amount for Greenbrook, 3.1 of interest for a total of 6.5. Now, the question I'm raising is that if Greenbrook only pays interest, they eventually pay like 3.1 million out of the total present value amount of 32 million. So essentially, under the interest-only approach, they would be paying 10% of what the taxpayers of the other towns have put in. Now, going back to my first example, if we pay, under the interest-only scenario, if we ask the taxpayers of the 3 towns to pay the full amount, Greenbrook doesn't pay a penny for anything. So something's the matter with that interest-only scenario. That one really should bother you. If we do the other case, where we have an unending set of interest payments with no repayment of principal, then Greenbrook would end up paying something like a present value of 6 million. So I've given you 3 cases now. One had 0 present worth for Greenbrook. That's the hypothetical case of instant repayment. The current plan gives you 3.1 million, and the hypothetical of not having any repayment gives you 6.5 million. So you say to yourself, gee, Yagged, what the hell are you doing here? You give me 3 answers, and like a lawyer, I'll say, well, on the one hand, it's this, and on the other hand, it's that. Well, which hand is right of those 3 hands that I just dealt you? I'm considerably confused by this, but I think those numbers are so big that we should not be pinning down a tuition payment without really understanding what we're doing here. And I just leave that to the entire board. I would like to recommend that we table this for this week and really have some deep thought about how do we solve those 3 cases I just gave to you, and make sure that we're doing the proper billing this year, because I suspect we're off by about $3 million over the life.
Amy, it's going to take me a lot more time to absorb this, but I have just simply, the first number that I'm questioning, the 20%, is that the basis of the percentage of students?
That's the percent of students from Greenbrook, yes.
Okay. And then the other thing, I heard you say something about 57 million, and I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4,
It's 55.9.
Principal. That's what you pay right now with the bonds. The principal of the first. It didn't include the 3 million, but it's not a big part.
Yeah, I'm only doing the
second loan, so to speak. The principal, what you borrowed, the first bond referendum is 32,426,000. The interest payments, and I think it's about 4% over 23 or 24 years, total $23 million. Okay. Adding them together, paying off the principal and interest on the first borrowing is Bernie's number. It's a shade under $56 million.
That's where the 57 came in that I heard, and I was
Right.
looking
Where's
for
the
that
57?
number.
It's 56 million.
It's 56.
Okay.
It's a shade under.
Okay,
that's
all right, as long as that number wasn't lost to me.
So
This takes a lot of chewing.
And again, it just hit me that maybe the taxpayers of Long Hill in the three towns are subsidizing Greenbrook to roughly half of that number on the top right-hand corner, because of just the way we've been doing it. I don't have an answer for anybody. It's a thought experiment to think about.
Yeah, well, I should
Bernie,
explain the process.
it's an interesting intellectual process. My problem with it, though, is that what we're trying to do tonight is set a tuition rate, not only to be charged to Greenbrook, but to anyone else who sends their students here. And in part, it's driven in part by requirements that we notify Greenbrook early enough in advance of next year, so that they won't be in a position to turn around and say to the Watchung Hills Regional School District, you didn't notify us what the tuition charge was going to be by February 4th, therefore we didn't include it on our budget, therefore how can you expect us to pay this tuition that you want to charge us for next year? But beyond that, let me finish. While it is a very interesting exercise, there's a couple of things that you got a little bit wrong. One, if we decided as a district with three towns to spend $35 million this year on a capital project, and we put that all into our operating budget, that would then become part of the tuition calculation for the following year, and we'd get our, whatever the percentages students of Greenbrook are to the total students in the school in next year's tuition payments. So we'd get more under that than any other scenario you gave. But again, the problem comes back to, while it's a nice intellectual exercise, you really need to direct it to the State Department of Education, because they're the ones who set the regulations on what you can and can't charge in tuition. And the regulations on what you can and can't charge in tuition are very clear. If we could, for example, have done this building project with a 5-year lease purchase arrangement, what we would have had to have done at the time would we go to Greenbrook, say, this is what we're planning to do, and ask them to pass a resolution approving it. If they had done that, then we could likewise get their percentage of the cost of that. But if you haven't done that, the state regulations, unfortunately for the Watchung Hills Regional School District, are pretty clear on what you can put in terms of building charges, building use charges. They include the interest. Tim's doing that in this calculation. They don't include, unfortunately, the principal. But I really want to caution everybody that even if you think that Bernie's argument has merit, that we need to tonight go ahead, adopt these things, and if we feel that we should have adopted a higher one or a lower one, come back and rescind it and re-vote on it. But it's essential that we vote on it tonight.
Just a second, hold on. We're going to do this orally, okay? Because there's not people that want to talk. Rob?
The point, I agree. I mean, if in fact there's merit in looking at the issue of principal payments, and you know, I've spent some time looking at the statutes. I looked at Scarillo's letter, and the issue here, it's a very interesting issue. And I know, Paul, this is sort of, you know, beyond the small, narrow spectrum here, but it's a very, very important issue. In that, and by the way, for all of you on the board that weren't at our finance meeting, in fact, Tim has sent a letter to Greenbrook requesting payment of $250,000, that the interest calculations had to be updated. In one of the previous years, it wasn't properly calculated. As to who made that mistake, I really don't know right now, but it's pretty clear we're owed $250,000 from Greenbrook on interest calculations. The issue really here, if you put it in a very as narrow focus as you can, is that we borrowed $35 million a couple of years ago. Let's leave the $3 million. Just make it. nice round number, $35 million, first and second, okay? And everyone from all the 4 districts has the use, enjoyment, the educational benefit of these additions, okay? The issue now, I think what Bernie was trying to say, if we put on a new roof, okay, or if we and that cost $1 million, that can be put into the calculation clearly for Greenbrook to pay its share, its 20% share. And I say 20%, it's roughly 20% of the kids in the school come from Greenbrook. Whether it's 18% in 1 year, 21%, let's just use 20%. Or if we internally funded $30 million expansion or $1 million expansion, that could be put into the calculation. It is not clear or unclear in that statute that we cannot, okay, seek a pro rata charge, okay, from Greenbrook over the life of the mortgage. We are including interest of the principal. Right now, you should understand one very, very clear issue. Greenbrook remains at 20%. 20% of $35 million is $7 million. Right now, for example, Warren Township, roughly, is about half of the district. You know, whether it's 48, 52%, it's roughly half, okay? So that, in effect, means that the taxpayers of Warren Township are paying $3.5 million for the share, for Greenbrook's pro rata share of the principal payments on the bond. That's mathematical. So the issue here, and I think what Bernie is trying to highlight for us to discuss, and Long Hill, if Long Hill's 25%, whatever the mathematical equation, and Watchung's 15%, whatever it is, it's inherently unfair to ask the taxpayers of the 3 districts to pay for the educational use and enjoyment of the of Greenbrook students. I want to it's very interesting. I looked at the new agreement. I'm not getting into details of it, of the sending agreement. No, there's just one sentence I just want to read, Paul. And I think it's apropos.
Be careful with going into
No. It has nothing to do with dollars and cents. No.
There's nothing been approved yet.
It's nothing. It's proposed language. This is really what I can say. I can paraphrase it. Greenbrook pupils attending Watchung Hills shall receive equal educational opportunities and shall be accorded all rights, privileges, and status if they were being schooled by Greenbrook. That's what we agree with. Every kid who comes to the school, whether they individually pay the $12,000, where they come from Greenbrook, Watchung, whatever district, no one cares where they come from. They get treated equally. So, to me, and I think to Bernie, and I want you all to be aware of this, it's a murky gray area at best, the issue of principle. And frankly, I'm going to propose a motion tonight which would direct, and to Peter, to your point, and I understand if we have to get something done tonight, setting the rate at 12,000, whatever it is, whatever, okay?
Before you start talking about proposing motions, okay, I'd
No.
like that, just saying, I really don't want that to be done in the public session right now, okay?
Okay, so, but,
There's issues in that have to do with negotiations I would rather have done separately, okay?
okay, but
I'm guessing what your motion might be, Rob.
you can guess. But the issue here, okay, the law does not clearly say that Watchung Hills cannot include in its calculations with Greenbrook. Greenbrook can disagree with it. We can believe we have the right to do it. They can believe they don't have the right to do it. To me, this is an important enough issue that this district, okay, should make a decision, because we're talking about 20-something years in the future, whether or not we're going to seek advice, an opinion, and a ruling that would enable us to put the issue of principle into the calculation formula of what we charge Greenbrook.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Sandy, you were next.
Yes, but I know Jerry's more emotionally involved perhaps, so if you have something, can you wait?
Absolutely.
You won't forget, because I'm taking notes, because
I'm
I'm
not going
going.
anywhere yet, am I?
Okay. Couple of things that, one, I just, as I'm listening to this, I've been to meetings where people from Watchung district that I come from, are upset because of the numbers of students, the percentage of the student body that comes from Watchung, and they feel that we're paying a very unfair amount of money. However, the one thing that was brought up time and time and time again is that the formula does not take into account only the percentage of the student body from each town. It also takes into consideration the property values of town. And that's why a town such as ours, which is paying 15%, that has 15% of the students, is paying, I think, 22% of the school budget. So right there, it troubled me when I asked about what that 20% was. It was the number of students. And I think based on the way the regional setup was developed originally, going back 50 years, we're not on that formula. That was not permitted. It was corrected at one point. It has a lot to do with property values. So if you are going to work that in, I think you're going to have to take into account more than just the percentage of students. The other thing that comes up, because Greenbrook at one time was saying, we'd like to be part of the 4-district sending. We don't want to be just sending district. We would like to be part of the original group of 3 sending districts. And again, the lawyers there said, no, you cannot, because the school at that point was maybe 45 years old, and the amount of capital outlay that went into this became so great that unless Greenbrook had like $500 million, I would say, about 500. Now this property is worth a fortune, and because you've been a sending district, Greenbrook has been a sending district, they cannot say, well, I've been like renting into this house, and now I'd like to be a part owner of this house just because I have tenants' right of being there. So therefore, this troubles me, what you're allowed to ask Greenbrook to do when they really are still on the basis of sending. They're not owners. They didn't vote on the referendum. So I don't know how that would come into play. Is this taxation without representation? We all went out and we fought, please, please, please vote. Our kids need this. Now somewhere, certainly the benefit is there for every student. So we don't walk around and say, which town are you from? You wear a W, you wear a G, and these are all of our students, and we want to give them the best education with the most benefit. However, I think this formula is going to it's just going to have to be clarified for me before I can understand where I'm coming from, because there are just too many factors in there that have a history legally that won't work with what we're saying now. So I would urge us to be very careful with where we're going. And anyhow, after 2 years, somebody in the state comes in and says, you charged them wrong, you have to pay them back money, or you charged them wrong, they have to pay you back money. So that we don't even have the final word. Tread very carefully and make sure you do this properly before a lot of money is going to get thrown into the hopper and wasted, because we're going to have a lot of legal bills to try to straighten out if we make a mistake.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Jared?
Yeah,
I think you're
Tim,
next.
the number that's here, I mean, just to make sure I understand it, you followed the guidelines that you put the numbers in the budget calculation, and you don't do anything, you just fill in the numbers and the line items and what comes out as a tuition rate?
Yeah, basically, how I derive these numbers, in fact, I did quite a bit of research on it, because I knew this was going to be a topic that was discussed quite a bit. So these are the type of things that I don't, this isn't something that we just slap together and here's your number. I talked to quite a few folks on this to get their input, some sendings and receivings, to see issues that they're having and how they calculate it. There's 2 ways you can do this, and there's tools that the state is nice enough to give us. Whether we disagree with how they ask you to do the formula or not, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can use the budget software. That's the first download that we got, I think it was probably last week. And you can enter in the budget numbers from this current year, 07-08. And on that information that you enter in, they basically take those numbers and apply the formulas to both the regular students and then the special ed student categories. And there's more than what you see here. There's about 8 or 9 special ed categories. We just happen to have just the one where we receive students. And of course, you're allowed to do outside of these 2 things that resource rate, which is A11, which is a total separate calculation based on state regulations. So what you have here is, I use the budget software to calculate it, and really, they do all the calculations. It's not a lot of inputting other than verifying 3 or 4 times that we had 07, 08 numbers in properly. So they're spread across, and the formulas were prorated the way they're supposed to be prorated. So this isn't really a tricky calculation, and I think what Sandy brought up is something that you have to keep in mind, that 3 years from now, our audit is complete, and you're going to get a certified tuition rate from the state of New Jersey. And that's compared with what we have here. And, you know, either we're going to owe Greenbrook or they're going to owe us back or forth based on the fluctuation in that and also the amount of students that the two of us are calculating. So that's where you got to be careful with when you're proposing a rate for the next year. Because if you go too high, I mean, I could try to go high, and I don't know how you can put additional information in this formula. You just can't do it. It doesn't allow you to do it. But if I went higher than this and said, well, we want to pay 15, and then the state certifies the budget in 3 years, well, we're going to owe them a lot of money. So that's something that you have to keep an eye on.
And just,
But that's how I calculated this. Now, the other way you can do it is using something called an A41, A42, and I have those two, and I downloaded them, and I actually threw in the numbers, and you know, the truth of the matter is, it's very similar to what this is. There's not a lot different, and it's particularly for us because we're a high school. Those A41 and A42 calculations are good in a couple ways. The advantage of them is that you can, if you have an elementary school, you can allocate certain costs to certain grades and whatnot based on your usage. And I think there's a big advantage to doing that because you can probably even out the rates in terms of the grades, and that's probably a better thing for them. For us, really, there's 2 rates. There's the high school rate, and then there's the LLD rate. And LLD is pretty simple. I mean, it's just one self-contained cost center divided by, and the other part of the formula, by the way, is the cost per pupil. It comes from the ADE, average daily enrollment. That's a state calculation. That's not even our calculation. They take 4 years of data, average it out, and plop it on the form, and that's it. That's what you use. And historically, it's not a bad way to do it.
what's that number look like, and, or what's that used for, that other AD?
That, basically, when you add up the entire budget amount that you put in for 0708, you divide that by the ADE, and that's how you get the cost per pupil. It's really kind of simple.
What does that number look like now? Which
That's-
similar to this?
It's, well, on this formula, it was 2213. That was the number. Students. But that's how I calculated the rates in front of you.
And this year, the number was like 12.6, if I remember correctly, the tuition rate that's being charged to Greenbrook roughly? So this is up like
Yes.
200 and...
A couple $100s per student.
Okay.
And the LLD rate is up slightly as well.
And just so I know, again, because we have to agree with Greenbrook that what the rate is, and Greenbrook's not filing for waiver caps this year, so their deadline is 15th to submit,
If they're not filing for cap waivers, then their deadline is March 6th.
March 6th, okay, so we haven't to them, but by then both, and you've talked about this with Greenbrook, I think, right? Or
Yeah, no, I've provided preliminary data and told them that the board needs to vote on this. I didn't give them an official number, but I gave them the preliminary numbers, so I can meet the statutory deadline. But that doesn't, again, for me, it's one thing. From the board, it's certainly something else. It's not a board-approved number at this point in time.
I just wanted one more comment, if I could, if you indulge me. I mean, as far as the discussion goes regarding the charging of the recovery of the principal that's being paid, I mean, it would have been nice had this whole conversation taken place before the project was financed as to how you're going to actually allocate costs, spread the financing out, what kind of financing alternatives there are. That discussion didn't take place. Instead, the voters of the three towns agreed that they would pay the cost for doing the project. That's the way the process worked. Now, to come back later and say, okay, well, gee, it's not really what I wanted to do. I think I should have done it differently. And to Sandy's point, Greenbrook voters, you didn't vote on it. It's like taking out a mortgage and having somebody say, you're paying my mortgage, rather than being a renter. it changes the whole dynamics of the process. So I just want to be cautious as far as, if we're getting, I think we agreed that we would get the legal advice, and I know Rob said it's clear that we can do this or that. I don't think anything.
I didn't say, you know what?
So Rob, hold on.
Well,
Just let him finish.
well,
Okay,
that's
you
what I
finished.
heard.
Okay, okay.
I
That's-
want
that's-
everybody to have a chance to speak here.
That's what I heard, that, it's clear we can charge this, it may be this or it may be that, but I just think, again, I thought we had a process, we agreed that we were gonna look at this thing in the context of data and information and what was allowed before we make any decisions about which way to go. So, to the motion that's on the floor, it's very specific. You heard Tim describe what it is that's going on as far as underneath this calculation goes. I think, we should limit to what's going on here to the motion, to the rate that's being charged, and anything else. Once we have all the information, we can decide which direction is appropriate to how to try to do that without getting into this big match as far as Greenbrook believes you can't charge principal because this was not part of any voted upon by its town payers, and it is taxation without being represented, and the laws are not that clear. That's a different discussion that needs to take place when all the information's available. And, if there's a letter from Tony, I haven't seen it, but I don't know whether it's clear or not clear, but as far as Greenbrook knows, it's clear that you can't do that. So there will be a pissing match, there will be a conflict, excuse my language, but there will be an issue as far as that goes, and that's above and beyond this tuition rate. So I'm done. Thank you.
Paul?
I'm sorry.
Thank you. First of all,
Sorry.
that's okay. First of all, I did not say it was clear, and I don't think there's anyone here, perhaps other than yourself, that heard me say that. Secondly, okay, this is not going to be an issue that, I will tell you now, I represent the high school, I represent the people of Warren, I'm not going to sit here and for the next 20 years, having Warren Township subsidize Greenbrook to the extent of $3.5 million. So what I am saying, okay, clearly, is I understand if we have to pass tonight, whether it's the $12,800, whatever that number is, fine. But also, what I'm saying, as someone that sits here from Warren, and if, people feel similarly from Warren or Watchung or Long Hill, that, if you want to subsidize, Greenbrook, that's your business. But all I'm saying, I'm not putting emotion into this, I'm putting fairness. And to say that Greenbrook didn't have a vote, Greenbrook chose not to be a member of the other, a owner, if that's the right word, of this district. That was their choice, okay? Hold on. The point, the fundamental point here is that we've spent $35 million building a new school, renovating the school, okay? Every kid gets the use, the benefit of that. So I don't know how the Commissioner of Education would rule, okay? I just believe that as a representative from Warren, I have an obligation, and perhaps other people feel that way, to let, whether it's the Commissioner of Education, whoever the authority is, to rule one way or another. For the next 20 years, without having made a good faith attempt, for the folks, the kids from Greenbrook, get the same identical use and enjoyment of this building, okay? And if we had funded it out of cash, they're paying interest, they're still getting the same benefit regardless of how the building was financed. And so therefore, I'm going to, later on this evening, to make a motion to that effect. Thank you, Paul.
Just hold on, okay.
Half
Go
of
ahead,
a
Sam.
sentence. I can't let something go by that has to
Can
be
I
corrected.
just say something? I don't want to get into a repetitive cycle of going around the room here, okay? So if I'm going to let us go one round one more time, and then we're going to kind of call it quit to this. We got a motion on the table. Go ahead.
Just a half
And
a
possible.
second. Greenbrook never had the choice of coming in, Bob. They could not, you cannot come in and buy in. A regional district that's formed is an entity closed. There's not even a decent way to get out of it. But I don't want that
Okay.
to stand on the record. There was no choice. Sorry, you did not have a choice.
Bernie.
Just very quickly, Tim said, we wouldn't want to raise the rates significantly. Just so you understand what I'm talking about, if you take a look at line 16 in the fourth column, in this upcoming year, there's a $645,000 principal repayment. We have about 2,200 students. I'm talking about adding something like $300 a year to the student per annual number. So it's not like an earth-shaking change, but that's all I was talking about. And finally, Peter, I forgot about the February 4th deadline, so I'm going to vote yes on this. I understand.
Peter?
I just wanted to
Oh, I'm
clarify.
sorry to say. Go ahead, go ahead.
Clarify 2 points. One is that the formula that Tim was talking about when talking about the state budget software is the formula that basically relies on the New Jersey Administrative Code provision that's titled Method of Determining Tuition Rates for Regular Public Schools. So when he says the formula, what it does is it takes all your budget line item matters that are referenced in that section of the administrative code that you can include in tuition and spits out the number. So that I just wanted to clarify that. The second point, Rob, I just wanted to clarify that the correction that we're trying to get on Greenbrook had to do with the last audit rather than really an interest problem. It had to do with when we did the audit last November, we got the results of the audit last November, and we were in a position where we had to, actually not last November, before that, the last budget process.
0405.
Right, when we had
Last
to
budget process, you're
provide
correct.
a credit to Greenbrook in this school year against tuition of about $300,000. Tim has discovered that it turns out that that was a result of what appears to have been an error in the audit process and a transposing of some documents, a transposing of two numbers, and that's what we're trying to get straightened out.
No, but it was based, correct, Tim, you weren't at the meeting, but it was based, Peter, on an incorrect allocation of the interest from the year 2004. That's what it was based on. It wasn't based on busing costs, it wasn't
But it
based on lunch
transposed interest
costs.
and principal.
I don't know what,
It
you know,
was just a
I wasn't there
total-
doing it, but it was based on interest.
It was a transposition of two numbers in the audit process that resulted in the error. That's what caused it.
In 0405, correct.
And it was derived out of the 0405.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just, Lou, you had a,
Yeah, just one last thing. Can we get our legal counsel to give us in writing, so we can put it in the documentations, whether you can charge for interest, whether you can charge for principal?
They did.
And put it on record.
we have that.
They-
We
did.
have that.
got
So
that in
then,
the bill.
therefore, why are we having this discussion on the principal issue?
Let's leave that for later.
We'll save that
Okay, all right,
discussion for
fine,
later.
thank you.
Okay, we have I just want to come back to them. We have a motion, A9. It's for the regular education tuition rate for non-constituent districts. Bernie, you had suggested in your comments that you might want to table this. I just want to
No,
come back to
I've withdrawn that based on
Okay.
Peter's comment.
Can I get if there's no more discussion on this item?
And I would like to withdraw my idea that we make them separate. Can we group them again?
If there's no opposition to that, who moved and seconded A9?
Paul,
I moved.
You moved,
Peter, I'm
and
sorry.
you seconded. Do you have any opposition to combining A9 through A11? Does anybody else have any concerns?
No.
Okay. You can move that. You can make it at that time, I'm sorry.
Then I'll
We will combine A9 through A11,
amend my motion to do that.
okay?
Move A9
See, you're slow.
to A11.
And Sandy, you're going to second that again? Okay, so we have now, actually, we're going to vote on A9 through A11. Can I get is there any discussion on this?
Yeah, I
You thought
just
I
wanted to
forgot.
say, well, I mean, A11, last year when I first came here, like May 7th, right after being appointed, there was a rate here of $19,500 per student. And I want to just commend you guys for coming up with something that looks more like a rate that is really based upon the way that the room is being utilized, or the resource center is being utilized, so every student pays its fair share of whatever the cost is incurred. So I'm very happy to see this, and I really commend you for doing it.
Any other comments at this time? Can we get a roll call vote?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Bob Munger?
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano?
Yes.
Mrs. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz?
No?
Mrs. Mendel?
Yes.
Mr. Pepe?
Yep.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Yagged?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving right along. We have no Bs. We do have a series of Cs, C1 through C21. Do I have any of those that people would like to have pulled for separate voting?
I would like to pull C3 and C17.
So C3 and C17 will be pulled. Do I have any others?
Yeah, C5 and did we say C11?
No.
And C11.
C5 and C11.
Are you pulling
Did anyone pull
C11
C7?
without C12?
I think you want to probably pull both of those. One has to do with emergent hiring, the background check, and the other one has to do with the hiring, the
Okay.
appointment. Okay,
Did
so
we
C11
pull-
and C12.
Did
Sandy?
we pull C7? I didn't hear anything.
I'll check.
C3,
No, we've
5,
not
7,
pulled C7.
17.
Let's pull C7.
You know
We'll
what?
pull C7.
You know what,
C-
I'm gonna withdraw C11, that's fine.
Okay, so C11 and C12, we'll just go with everything.
I
No.
just wanna pull C5, that's it.
Okay, got it. Are there any others that we want to pull at this time?
So we have 3.
I have C3.
I will move then C1 and 2, C4, C6, C8 through 16, and C18 through 21.
Okay, no, that's good. You beat me to it. Do I have a second on those?
I'll second it. That was very good. Very impressive.
Okay, do I have any discussion on the Cs that have been moved? Which are, as Peter read them, C1, C2, C4, C6, C8 through C16, C18 through C21. Any discussion on those?
If the C16, just one question, is that an existing person?
Okay, hearing no other
Okay,
further.
I had a question.
Laura, yes.
C5.
Yes,
That was
What-
pulled.
that's been pulled, that's not up.
Oh,
yet.
so, okay. Can't
You would
ask.
ask that to be pulled.
Okay.
We'll come back to that. Any other discussion on the ones that have been moved? Hearing no other discussion, can I get a roll call vote?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano? Mrs. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz? Yep. Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Pepe?
Yo.
Mr. Sun? Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Yagan?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, let's start down the list. We have C3. Who wanted that pulled?
I pulled it. Fran.
Do you want to have a move and second on that?
So my only question was, is that a Schedule D issue?
No, not at all.
It's not.
They're not part of the association.
Okay. I would then like to move C3 and C17.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
So we have a motion of C3 and to 317.
Jerry answered my question on C7.
I got it. Yeah, I see that. Do I have a second? Do I have a second on C3 and C17? We already did. Any other questions or discussion on that? Can I get a roll call vote on C3 and C17?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano? Mrs. Fechner? Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Fechner? Sorry. Mr. Horowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Pepe?
Yep.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Yagan?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We have
I'll now
C5.
move C5.
Can I get a second on C5?
Second.
Discussion on C5.
Okay, I had a question. What particular subject did this teacher teach, or was it?
She was teaching the arts and a ceramics class.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on C5?
Before we
Okay.
vote on it, can I move C7?
No.
No.
Can we get a roll call vote on C5?
You don't have to.
Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have to. Can I get, all those in favor of C5, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes.
Sandy,
Now I'll
do you
move
wanna
C7.
Can I get a motion on C7?
Can I second
Can I
it?
get,
You can
do I have any
second.
comments on discussion
I
on
have to
C7?
make a comment.
Man, you guys are like moving this along as fast as I can.
Aren't we wonderful tonight? Phyllis Cornelius has been with us not 50 years, but doggone close, 37 years, and I just felt that this should be a separate vote. And those of you who have had the pleasure of knowing Phyllis, she was always greeting you with a smile, and no matter what you would ask of her, she always seemed to be able to do it. She was appreciated, and I wanted to know it, and that's why I pulled it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Great. All right, let me see. All those in favor? Roll call, say aye.
Right. Excuse me.
Opposed?
Caught me in mid-gulp.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. We are finished with the Cs.
Did we do, oh yeah, we did, never mind.
Combined 17.
Okay.
17, got it.
I'm now on to the Ds. Are any of the Ds, I have D1 through D6. Does anybody want to pull any of those for separate voting purposes? Hearing none, can I get a motion on D1 through D6?
Move D1 to D6.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on D1 through D6?
Tim, does D2 mean that we had only expenses and no revenue from the cafeteria?
No, that's just the board approving the bills that are, that has, no, we definitely have revenues each month. You don't have to approve those, though.
Don't we usually get them?
You don't get a
Second meeting.
You get a second meeting.
The second meeting, you get a
Second
statement.
Of the finances of it. Any other discussion on D1 through D6? I'd like to thank the PTO for their generous donation. I certainly will tell you that the photography students are eager to use the R1800 printer. It's a nice printer. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing that, can I get a roll call vote? Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano? Mrs. Fechner?
Yes?
Mr. Horowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Pepe?
Yep.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Yaggett?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, with that, we can move on to other business.
Oh, can I back up? I just noticed the wording of the D5, the teacher support program, can we eliminate mini grants from the wording?
Does anybody object to the elimination of the word mini grant from the, what does it mean?
The reason that I ask for that is while I was on the PTO, this was a program I started, and I remember our treasurer was very careful to avoid using any grant-type language because it's a flag for auditors, and so I just wanted to get it off the language here.
Okay. Does anybody object to removal of the term mini grant from this?
Not at all.
All right. All those, all right. Is that, you need a vote on that, Tim? You want to vote on that?
I think I'll just scratch it off.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, do I have any other business at this point in time? Jerry?
I didn't bring it up under the 8th, but last year we approved some other types of rates for special services, for evaluations and things like that, and I didn't see it in this agenda, and I'm wondering why.
The evaluations, yeah, I don't have them on this agenda.
I mean, it affects me, but
I have the extended school year in there.
I know you did.
Which we did.
Items, but I mean, last
Yeah.
year there was $1,000, I think, for
the evaluations.
or for child study team things, and
Yeah, I don't know if it,
Yeah, somehow I'm thinking that, going back to that agreement, that the services of the child study team for students who are placed here are included in the agreement. I didn't think it was a separate area.
I'm just going, last year we approved rates.
Yeah. I'm
And
trying
that's
to
when
remember the
Greenbrook said you gave them
context.
the option of being able to one was for case management, so they were able to
Yeah, but
say,
that-
we'll manage our own cases, so
Yeah.
that didn't.
No, the
But
idea of
there's
case
other, there may be other
management.
sending or other constituent districts that
I
have.
believe the rate that was set for the child study team services is that if we were requested, like sometimes we are requested, if a district is, let's say, in a litigation or a situation where they want an independent evaluator, then we would bill them at that prescribed rate.
I'm just
So,
saying,
I don't-
it just
I don't-
occurred to me that when we were looking through that last, I remember last year
Yeah.
approving
Yeah, they-
rates.
The issue
They-
of case management would not apply.
You may want to.
yeah, they tend to fluctuate, those costs anyway,
Yeah.
I would think.
But the issue of, in other words, if a student is coming from Greenbrook to our school, or any student who's coming to our school, that student receives case management services as part of the program. And that's what's, I think that's stated in the tentative proposed agreement.
And that includes their evaluation and child study
Yeah,
team
that
and
would
all
be part of the
stuff.
case management.
If you want to go back and look at it, just to see.
Sure, you
Yeah,
did
that's a
last
good point, we
year.
will, thank you.
know,
Yeah.
Whatever that rate was that we approved.
Any other business at this point in time?
Mr. President,
Tim?
only because Rob brought it up before, and I think as the board as a whole, there's one, in the Finance Committee, we did discuss, it was an error that occurred in 0405 with the 0405 audit, and it had to do with last year's reimbursement to Greenbrook. And basically, in a nutshell, so the whole board understands it. The two numbers, the number that we paid in interest, I think Bernie has it on his schedule. Maybe he has it on his schedule. The principal is $100,000. That's what the principal charge was for that year. The interest was $1.4 million, a little bit under that. And in the formula, when it was handed into the state, the two numbers were transposed. It's two different line items, so they just switched them, is what happened. So when the state certified the rate, they certified the rate with the $100,000 being recorded as interest, which is the thing that we can charge, at least according to statute. Now, it should have been $1.4 million, so that was the error. So essentially, that audited certified rate was incorrect. It was too low. And we paid back, essentially, we paid back Greenbrook as a credit in this year's 07-08's tuition. So they got the benefit of, the Greenbrook has the benefit of that. So if you calculate it, you calculate the numbers, it comes out to about $230,000 roughly. And the question is, I've already notified Greenbrook, as Rob had mentioned and Paul had mentioned. And the question is, as a board, where do we pick that up as revenue? And this is a discussion that has to take place with Greenbrook. I understand that, but as our board position, I wouldn't recommend asking to go after to get this money right now in 07-08, because I don't know if it's entirely possible. But that's something I'm going to tell you. I would, if I'm going to make a recommendation, I'd say 08-09 to you, and make that part of our revenue, at least for our board position to say to Greenbrook. But that's, that's something as a group that you have to discuss. That's all.
Do you need a decision tonight on that one?
I think where we are now, having sent to them the contract, I think there's a process in place for negotiations that I'd like to just hold that topic in part for that discussion to go forward. Okay. So your answer to your question is not tonight. Okay. Any other business at this point in time? Okay, hearing none, then what we'll do is we'll open it up for the second opportunity for public comment. You have 5 minutes. Just give us your name and address, and it doesn't have to be on an agenda topic.
Thank you.
And if you could use, I apologize, if you could use the microphone there, then we can actually record your voice, and you'll actually show up on the DVD. And yes, sir.
How do you do? Thank you. You're welcome.
We can share.
And I don't need one.
I just share with Sandy. School acceptance.
Good evening, Dr. Seelig, Dr. Stromslin, and the rest of the Board of Education. My name is Louis Diaz, and I'm here with my wife, Grace Diaz, to ask for your help. And first of all, I want to thank you for your service. I was just amazed sitting there, listening to the issues that you had to struggle with. And I'm sorry, 15 Hickory Lane in Greenbrook, New Jersey.
Could I
But
ask you one other thing? And
Sure.
just by way of, I would like you to avoid the use of anybody's name in this particular discussion, okay?
Okay.
Particularly the person that you're referring to, okay?
Okay.
Student.
The students.
The student's
I
name.
will not do
okay?
that.
You can call me whatever you want to.
We're here because we have a situation that is quite unique, and we need your help. On December 20th, we got a call from our pastor at Calvary Chapel Church, and he said that there was a family from the Warren area, I believe, that was planning to co-host an international exchange student from Brazil, and that the family had backed out at the last minute. It was Christmas time, and whether we would, be willing to host this child here in our home to attend Watchung Hills Regional High School. Candidly, I wasn't excited about the idea. I have 3 kids in the school system, and it was hard enough to raise 3, so let alone adding another one. But my wife and I prayed about it, and we agreed that it would be a good experience for not only the school, but also for the students and my children to try this out and give it a shot. On December 21st, we communicated that, and the exchange program apparently sent a form of some sort, which I think you have, to the school. It lists our name, our address, and so forth, communicating the situation, and basically there was an agreement of some sort that was reached where it was okay for that student to come here. Now, the parents spent a lot of money to furnish, to provide for her, to buy the plane ticket, and there was a fee of $4,000 American, which I understand is like $10,000 Brazilian, that was also expended. And because of that form, which we received and they received, my wife and I agreed to accept this child into our home and to host her for the period of time. And she arrived at our home on January 26th of this year. She's a wonderful young lady. We taught her about football yesterday a little bit, and so she understands our football, not theirs. On Tuesday 29th, our family, on the 20th, my wife went to register this child here at the high school. She was registered, and on the 29th, the following day, I believe, and I may be off by a couple of hours here and there, we received a call that told us that despite the prior understanding and despite the fact that she had flown halfway around the world and that she was in our home, that she could not attend the high school because of kind of the same issue that you guys were talking about, this, Greenbrook versus, Watchung Hills and Township issue. And the long and the short of it is, candidly, we've reached out. We're standing in the role, literally, of surrogate parents. If my daughter or your daughter were in that country and I was there, I'd be doing the exact same thing in front of those people, because I view it as my obligation to ensure that those parents have peace of mind, which they don't right now, with regard to their daughter and what happens to her in America. The bottom line is that her so-called American dream experience at our school has not gone well. In fact, it's more of a nightmare. She's been crying since she found out that she would not be able to attend the high school because of this division or schism that exists between the schools. She's not a resident of Greenbrook. She's certainly not a resident of any other township in the area, and that was not an issue when the form was originally signed, but now it's an issue. And I don't understand why it's an issue. I understand that there's some tuition involved, and that Greenbrook doesn't want to pay, and Watchung Hills doesn't want to absorb it. But our situation is that as the surrogate parents of this child, we need to find a solution. The school period that she was covered for in that contract has already started. So she's now sitting at home with my wife, and they're talking pretty much every day with the mom, and we don't know what to do. I mean, do we take this kid and ship her back? Is that what we want to do? And if that's the case, then you need to let us know. What I tried to do was to reach out to everybody that we've known, literally to try to find a solution, because candidly, not only are we embarrassed, we're the host family. We're your family that is putting our face, not only in front of our church, but in front of her parents, to represent this community as parents in the best possible way that we can. And literally, that's what it's all about. And the way I look at it is, if my kid was there, and this happened to her, I would want to know that there was someone there that would be as adamant and as passionate in expressing the importance of allowing this issue to be the best interest of a child issue and not something else. And where we are right now is, despite our best efforts, Dr. Strama, we've all tried through the church and otherwise, we've not been able to find a co-host family in Warren or any of the other townships that would solve our little problem. And unfortunately, the families that have been, people are willing to do it 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks from what I heard today. Look, this is a 5-month commitment that we had to undertake. So we're between a rock and a hard place. Tomorrow, next week, this child would have already missed a week's worth of school. We have to decide whether we're going to ship her back, and I put that decision to you, because candidly, it's our mutual obligation, not just my family's obligation, to decide how we're going to treat a visitor from another country in our region. And if we don't have an alternate solution, what I propose to Dr. Seelig is that perhaps the right thing to do in the interim is to allow the child to participate in the classes until we find a more permanent solution to the problem. But her sitting at home in limbo, crying to my wife, and then my wife having to explain that to her mother night after night, it's not fair to the child, and it's certainly not, I think, consistent with the type of community that we're very proud to live in. This is not what I would want my child to experience if I sent her to Brazil or any other country. So I literally ask for your help in trying to figure out a solution that is reasonable. We're willing to do whatever it takes, literally. And you need to let us know what that is. But at this point, we're out of options. And we desperately need your help. And I apologize that this is out of turn. I realize this is not on the agenda. I know you've been very kind, Dr. Stromson, and I appreciate it. Dr. Seeley, I thank you for your time and your courtesy and everything that you've tried to do. But we're still in the same situation, and I'm just really worried that this child is going to be the victim. And unfortunately, despite our best efforts, the net result has been zero. So I want to thank you for your time, and anything you can recommend, we're open to. But this is a community decision. If we're going to ship this child back, I need you to tell me that. And I will absolutely do that. I will put that child on a plane, even at my own expense, if I have to make sure that she's taken care of. But if she's not going to attend school here, she's got to attend school somewhere. And we've reached out to Pingree, we've reached out to the Christian schools, we've done all of that. And the Christian schools won't take her because she's a Catholic. She's not a Christian. Pingree won't take her because you cannot believe the runaround that my wife has started. And the only reason we've even gone through this exercise is because of the fundamental belief that if it was our kids, I guarantee you, in some foreign land, you would want those parents doing what we're doing. It's not about Greenbrook. It's not about the township of Warren. It's not about WHRHS. It's certainly not about me, my wife, or my kids. It's about this child. And I implore you to think about it, and let's figure out what we could do. And we will do anything at this point. We're desperate, and we need the help. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much. And we're not out of order. You're right at the right time, which is the second time to bring up other topics besides the agenda topics. So.
Paul?
Rob, yeah.
Would there be this is a little unorthodox, whatever, would there be I'm very moved by what the gentleman said. Is there a point that we can perhaps waive the rules and see if there's something that we as a board can do at this point? Because
that's a good question. What I thought we would do, Rob, is because this is going to get into a lot of discussion about this specific individual and the circumstances around it, I thought it would be better for us to have that discussion in the executive session. And we, at that time, and then we can come back at that point in time, if we so choose, to make a motion at that point in time, along the lines of perhaps what you're talking about.
Okay.
So I just wanted to hold that discussion.
I understand.
Because there's,
Can you
we're going to get down to the individual.
then tell the gentleman that what we're in fact going to do so he doesn't leave, and hopefully, in that discussion, we can see if, what we can do is the right course of action?
Bernie, you had a question?
When we have students from other countries come here for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, do we charge them tuition?
They're usually here for 2 weeks or 2
Just
and a
5
half.
months,
No, but
Bernie.
it's well, the question is, we don't charge.
The answer is no.
The answer is no. That
Okay.
to me, that's a starting
what
point.
you want to know. What we're going to do is, unfortunately, we run as a very formal body. We try to. And so we go into the public session here. The next step for us is to go into executive session where we can discuss matters that deal with negotiations, litigation, and personnel. Sometimes matters specific to students and things like that, okay? So we want to have that discussion, and I thought that this discussion should really occur there because we're going to end up getting into detail about this individual. And so at that time, we would excuse you. After that, we can come out and, actually, when we go into that, we'll inform you, and I'm sure it'll be like this, that we will go into executive session, after which there may be action taken, and then we would make a motions at that point in time, okay?
I just want to clarify. So initially, the student had a host family in Warren, and then that would have been covered because they would have been technically a resident of Warren.
We'll go into that discussion.
Okay.
I don't want to cloud.
No. So,
You need to know.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about the international exchange program?
We can.
We're talking about
Yeah.
The whole thing, that whole thing is? Okay.
yeah, we're going to get into that later.
Okay.
okay? Do we have any other public that would like to speak? Is there anything you want to say?
Go for it, Jose.
I appreciate you coming this evening and presenting your arguments. Very nicely done.
And we will be in touch with you in the morning.
But could be the
Pardon?
evening. Well, why does he wait around?
It may be later.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd wait around.
No, I don't think they.
Because there's other things that we're going to talk about, and I wouldn't want to commit to the fact that we could be done in 15 minutes, and then have you be around for 2.5 hours while we tried to close things up.
No.
You might want to have dinner
We'll call you in the
and
morning.
maybe,
Could they give us cell phone numbers?
if you have
Or a cell phone number, maybe?
No, I think it's best
If
if
you
we
could give me
called you
your
in the
phone
morning.
number,
Or we
then
can get your phone number.
The phone number's right on here.
Tom, you have the
Oh,
cell
it is,
phone?
okay.
We'll give you a call or either this evening or in the morning, depending on the hour.
Jerry's got this.
we have 3 copies of their cell phone numbers. I think we've got this covered. Yeah, we're going to have to ask you. Not yet, you don't have to, we'll make the motion in just a minute. You can sit down for at least another 30 seconds. Tom, do you have the number there? Okay, we may, if we have questions, we may call you, just by way of clarification of questions, okay? With that, can I get a motion to move into executive session for the purposes of confidential matters that are governed like attorney-client privilege as well as possible personnel matters, after which action may be taken?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
For a second. I'll do a second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we've moved into executive session. Thank you.